So when you're building anything complex, I mean, a new feature, a whole product line, a crucial service update, there's always one single challenge.
Hmm.
And it causes more project failures than any technical bug ever could. It's not about the code.
Not at all.
It's making sure that everyone on the project agrees on exactly what they're building and, more importantly, why.
It sounds so simple, right? But the minute you get engineering, design, sales, marketing, and leadership all in one room,
Oh, it all falls apart.
the definition of success just fragments
Yeah.
instantly. We're talking about huge internal misalignment where one team thinks they're building a spaceship and another one is like building a really fast bicycle.
A very fast bicycle, exactly. And that's precisely why the top product organizations, your Googles, your Metas, your Amazons, they rely on one single document to define reality.
The product requirements document, the PRD,
The PRD.
it's the anchor. It's designed to stop that fragmentation. It's that foundational doc that clearly spells out 5 key things.
Okay, what are they?
First, what is being built? The actual features. Then, why it's being built. The strategic thinking.
Right.
Who it's for, the users,
Right.
how you'll know you succeeded, the KPIs. And finally, when it can realistically be delivered. So your timeline.
So for this deep dive, we've basically cracked open the industry standard structures to give you a shortcut. This isn't just about definitions. This is about the sophisticated practice that leading teams use.
Right.
Our mission is to unpack the structure, the psychology, and even the politics of writing a truly great PRD. So let's get into it.
Okay, let's start with the most basic question. Why does this thing even exist? Our sources point to 5 core functions, and really they all just boil down to cutting down on risk and inefficiency.
Okay.
The first one is to clarify objectives. The feature has to tie directly back to a strategic business goal.
So if it doesn't, it's just noise.
Exactly. If you can't trace its lineage back to a big company objective, it's probably scope creep or, just unnecessary work.
And I think the second function is where you stop the most chaos, aligning teams.
Mhm.
When you have a PRD as that single source of truth, you're not digging through emails chains or Slack threads anymore. Product design, engineering, marketing, everyone's looking at the same map.
Precisely. And that alignment naturally leads to the third function, which is reducing ambiguity. Ambiguity is just the absolute enemy of development speed.
It's a velocity killer.
It is. It eliminates guesswork. If an engineer has a question at 2 in the morning, they should be looking at the PRD, not their product manager's inbox.
And the last two functions are more about validation, right? It enables measurement because you define success metrics and acceptance tests so early, you're forced to say what done actually looks like.
And critically, it has to serve as a reference. A good PRD is a living thing. You use it throughout the entire life cycle, ideation, QA, launch, even the postmortem. If your PRD just gathers dust after the first design review, you've completely wasted your time.
Okay, so let's get into the structure. You have the basic metadata title, version, owner, status. That's just housekeeping. But the real starting point, especially for an executive, is the executive summary.
Oh, absolutely. This has to be the most perfectly crafted 100 words in the entire document.
It's the whole pitch.
It's the elevator pitch, yeah.
Yeah.
It has to capture the what, the why, and the expected impact. If the reader can't get the whole project from those first couple of paragraphs, the rest of the document is already fighting an uphill battle.
So let's use our example, building an in-app messaging feature. The summary would be something like, we're building a unified in-app messaging system to address customer frustration from slow email support. Our goal is to improve support response times by 30% and boost CSAT scores, replacing our old email system.
That's it. It's so crisp. You immediately know the pain point, you know the solution, and you know the measurable outcome. The whole investment is immediately defensible.
And that idea of defense leads us right into the next section, defining the problem and the scope. And I think the problem statement is where a lot of teams fail because they're just so excited about the solution, they forget to prove the pain.
That's such a fundamental mistake. A PRD has to articulate the problem, not jump to the solution. You need the user pain points, the context, and this is the most important part, the evidence.
The data.
The data. Why now? You need user feedback, market research, something to justify the effort.
So for our customer support example, the evidence is key. The problem isn't just we don't have chat. It's backed by this killer data point, something like current support via email leads to delayed responses. Our average resolution time is 42 hours.
42 hours. Oof.
Right, leading to significant churn risk. On top of that, our competitor benchmarking shows chat support increases user satisfaction by about 25%.
And that is the political power of a well-written PRD.
Yeah.
It completely changes the conversation. It's no longer, do we want to build this? It becomes, we must build this to close this 42-hour service gap and stay competitive.
So once the problem is locked in, you have to define the boundaries with goals and non-goals. And the goals have to be quantifiable, no vague aims.
Correct. Specific goals, like reduced average response time by 30%. Improve our CSAT score from a baseline of 3.8 to 4.5. These become the non-negotiable success metrics.
And then you have the non-goals. I honestly think this is the most politically savvy part of a PRD.
It really is.
Listing what you are building is easy, but explicitly saying what you are not building, that is a powerful shield against scope creep.
It is the ultimate tool for managing expectations. When a leader asks later, hey, why didn't we add the automated chatbot? You can point right back to the PRD,
Where it says.
where it explicitly says, AI-powered chatbot support and voice call integration are out of scope for V1 to hit our January 30th launch date. That single sentence saves you weeks of arguments. It saves engineering bandwidth.
So it's not just documentation, it's a risk mitigation strategy. You're defining the edges of the sandbox.
And who's playing in the sandbox? That's the next part. User personas. You have to go beyond simple demographics. Who is actually going to benefit from this?
Right. It's not enough to say the user is anyone who uses our app. That tells you nothing. You need to define a persona, like Alex the power user.
And you have to dive into Alex's context. What's his goal? Getting a quick fix when a high-value transaction fails. What's his pain point? Having to leave the app, open his email, and wait 2 days for a reply. It breaks his workflow. He loses trust in the service. The more detailed that persona, the better the design team can build an empathy into the actual solution.
Okay, moving into the functional blueprint. This is where we get into the how, specifically what the system has to do. And the industry standard for this is user stories.
Yeah, user stories are great because they shift the focus from engineering tasks to actual user value. You have to follow that format. As a user type, I want a goal for that reason.
Right.
It immediately forces you to link every single requirement back to the user persona and the problem you're trying to solve.
So for our Alex the power user, we'd write, as a customer with a critical app issue, I want to start a chat from the help section so that I can get instant answers without leaving the app.
Perfect. And here's the sophisticated part that a lot of people miss. Every single user story needs to have acceptance criteria.
The pass-fail conditions.
Exactly. The objective, measurable conditions that let you mark that story as done.
This is such a huge differentiator. It kills ambiguity. The acceptance criteria for starting a chat isn't just the chat button works.
No.
It has to be specific, like, given the user is logged in, when they tap help, a start chat button is visible, and when they tap it, the chat window opens in under 500 milliseconds.
That specificity leads you right into the core requirements. And we split them into two types, functional and non-functional.
Okay, break that down.
Functional requirements are the things the system explicitly does, like allowing a user to start a chat, or persisting the chat if the user closes and reopens the app. They're testable actions.
And then you have the non-functional requirements, the NFRs. These are the quality attributes, and this is where so many products get into trouble.
They absolutely do, because NFRs are expensive, and they're often politically unpopular. They add cost and time without adding a shiny new feature.
But they're critical.
They're what dictates whether the feature is actually usable. If you ignore NFRs, you can launch something that's functional but completely unusable.
So let's talk about the types. If we say the chat has to have excellent performance, what does that actually mean in a PRD?
It means you specify it. You write, all backend calls for sending messages must respond within 500 milliseconds 95% of the time.
Yeah.
And you have to justify it. Why 500 meters? Because a sluggish chat is almost as bad as waiting for an email.
So that requires deep collaboration with engineering. And what about scalability? If we say we need to support 10,000 concurrent chats.
That dictates a completely different infrastructure than if you only needed 100. You have to define that early. And we can't forget security and compliance. These are just non-negotiables. For our chat feature, the PRD has to specify end-to-end encryption for all user chat data and, critically, GDPR-compliant data storage for all EU users. These aren't just features. They're mandatory constraints that drive design and infrastructure choices from day one.
And then, of course, after all of that is locked down, the PRD has to include the UX/UI design links, the wireframes, the prototypes. That's what ensures the visual representation lines up with all the words we just wrote, so designers and engineers aren't interpreting things differently.
So now we circle back to the how. Specifically, how do we know if this was all worth it? This section is all about success metrics and KPIs, and they have to be quantified against a baseline. Success isn't a feeling, it's a number.
Right, and that structure is so important. Metric, baseline, target, and measurement method. For example, our CSAT score. The baseline was 3.8, the target is 4.5, and it's measured via post-chat surveys. It forces accountability.
And it connects right back to our problem statement. The response time baseline was 42 hours. The target is 12 hours. We measure that objectively through system logs.
So you missed that target.
Then the feature has functionally failed its objective, even if the code works perfectly.
Okay, now let's get into the messy reality. Dependencies and risks. A good PRD isn't just a wish list, it's a project management tool. You have to identify the blockers.
And it's not enough just to list a risk. You have to categorize it. Is it technical, external, operational? And every single risk needs an owner and a mitigation strategy.
You mean example for our chat feature?
An operational risk might be, our 50 support agents aren't trained on the new interface. The mitigation is, the support ops owner will ensure all agents complete training by December 15th.
Right, so that's just the responsibility for solving it from the product manager to the right owner. And after risks, you include the high-level timeline or milestones.
This isn't a detailed project plan. It's a high-altitude roadmap. Key phases. UX approval by date X, alpha release by date Y, public launch by date Z. It just sets the cadence for everyone.
And then finally, a mature PRD has to have a section for open questions or future consideration.
Yes, self-control. These are your V2 features, the great ideas that came up, but you intentionally deferred to stop V1 from getting bloated. You capture the idea, maybe, should we support file attachments? So it doesn't get lost. But you make a conscious decision that it's not for the initial launch.
Okay, that's the full blueprint. Before we wrap up, let's distill this into the most actionable best practices, the things that separate a good document from a great one. Number one, be concise, not vague.
Yes. If you use words like fast, easy, or user-friendly, you have to decide what that means with objective numbers in the NFR section.
Number two, use measurable criteria. Every requirement must be testable. If QA can't write a definitive test to fail the feature, the requirement is basically useless.
3, prioritize ruthlessly. Use a framework, something like Moscow must have, should have, could have, won't have. It forces those hard trade-off conversations to happen early.
And number 4, which is maybe the most important, collaborate early. Don't write a PRD in a vacuum and throw it over the wall to engineering.
Please don't.
Involve them while you're drafting it. Pressure test the feasibility and the cost before anything is set in stone.
And finally, number 5, keep it living. Use a tool, Confluence, Notion, whatever, that allows for versioning. You have to accept that the PRD is going to evolve. As you learn things in development or user testing, the plan will change. A static PRD for a changing project is just dangerous.
So just to give you some context on where this document fits in, there's a whole family of these D documents. You've got the MRD, the market requirements document.
Right, and that's more focused on market needs, opportunities, the competitive landscape, usually owned by product marketing.
Then there's the BRD, the business requirements document.
Which is all about the business objectives, ROI, legal, compliance, often owned by a business analyst.
And then the PRD, the product requirements document, is the one we've been talking about. It's the technical execution blueprint. It's owned by the product manager and used directly by design and development to actually build the thing. They all inform each other, but the PRD is the instruction manual for delivery.
So at the end of the day, what does this all mean for you? The PRD is your roadmap, but it's also your shield. If you can run through that checklist, does it state the problem and goals? Does it define the user? Does it have measurable metrics? Does it have objective criteria for all requirements? Does it identify risks and owners? If you can check those boxes, you're not just planning anymore. You're executing with discipline.
Absolutely. It ensures every dollar you spend is spent solving the right problem for the right user. It's the single source of truth that defines reality for the entire team.
And that brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. The established best practice says that a PRD has to be a living document. It evolves. It requires constant review and alignment. So if the blueprint for what you're building never really stops changing, what does that fundamentally suggest to you about the true nature of completion or launch? How often does a successful product ever really hit version 1.0 and just stop? The work and the documentation is never really finished.